Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 715 for July 22nd, 2018. This week I'm in New Orleans for Tales of the Cocktail. Specifically, I'm at the Hotel Monteleone in the Hendricks Ministry of Relaxation. Yeah, it's a gin joint, but this is still a whiskey podcast. Coming up in a few minutes.
There are some really fantastic minds helping think about the growth of this. I would love to see it grow because that means we get back more. You know, I want to be giving away millions of dollars in the next few years, and I want to do that in a really thoughtful way. So we'll just have to see what the growth looks like.
This year's Tales of the Cocktail is a bit different. Make that a lot different from the previous editions. Earlier this year, a new management team took over from the Cocktail Conference's original founders, turned Tales into a nonprofit with its own foundation, and added a new emphasis on giving back to the hospitality community. Caroline Rosen is the executive director of the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation, and we'll hear from her later on WhiskyCast In-Depth, along with more of the fun and games here in New Orleans. That's coming up later on, along with the calendar of events, Behind the Label, Your Voice, and the What I'm Tasting This Week department, all on this special edition of WhiskyCast from New Orleans.
WhiskyCast, brought to you by Redbreast, the definitive single pot-still Irish whiskey. Those in the know Redbreast.
This is whiskey, Johnny Walker's Scotch whiskey, from this place and these people, Scotch makers, creating the bold and complex flavour of Johnny Walker Black Label. Step right up.
Let's get started with the news. It's brought to you by Highland Park. And once again, we'll need to start off with the global trade war and its impact on the whiskey business. The Trump administration has issued its first response to the tariffs on American whiskey and other U.S. exports imposed by Canada, the European Union, Mexico, China, and Turkey over the last few weeks. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer filed a formal complaint this week at the World Trade Organization, denouncing those tariffs as unjustified. Of course, the tariffs were imposed to retaliate for new U.S. tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, which the Trump administration has justified on national security grounds. While the WTO cannot order tariffs to be lifted, it can allow for the U.S. to respond in kind with its own tariffs on imports from those trading partners. The trade war did accomplish one positive thing for the whiskey industry. It's bringing together the leaders of the major whiskey industry trade associations around the world for a summit this week in Louisville. Believe it or not, that has never happened before until Kentucky Distillers Association President Eric Gregory and his team decided to invite their colleagues to Louisville.
Every trade organization on whiskey has been talking about this and issuing statements about this and such, and we just felt it was a time to kind of get the family together and sit down one-on-one with each other and speak openly about where they see these things headed, what their strategy has been, what they're hearing from their elected officials, and see if we can come up with some common messaging, common strategy items on how we can hopefully influence to give back to free and fair trade.
What do you expect to come out with next Thursday when you release this joint statement on behalf of all the family?
Well, since this is the first time this group's gotten together, I really don't know. I hate to say that, but we're looking forward really just to kind of getting everybody in a room and discussing what's going on and how we can possibly be as an influence as an industry instead of just kind of separate partners in all this. I would like to think that we could come out with something that really encourages our world leaders, as we've all said, to de-escalate this conflict and get back to free and fair trade so we can get back to the business of making the world's greatest whiskeys. But we'll have to wait and see. We're all part of one big whiskey family. Everybody, fortunately, gets along. We've got a lot of members on both sides of the pond that are, common members. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great couple of days, and glad to have them here in Kentucky.
Have you seen any impacts yet in Kentucky from the tariffs?
We've not, and a lot of this is because it is just so new. We have a lot of farmers here in Kentucky that are concerned, as are our distillers. But the tariffs have really only been enacted the past couple of weeks, and many of the larger global players have had the luxury of being able to stockpile overseas to hopefully get them through a short-term bump, because we all hope that this is just a blip on the radar screen and isn't something that's going to be prolonged. So what we have asked all of our distilleries, as soon as they start hearing or feeling any impact, to report to us, because our lawmakers, especially our congressional delegation, are keeping very close watch on this, as you can imagine, and want to make sure that we, completely understand the effects.
The summit will be held behind closed doors, and Gregory has turned down requests from several members of Congress to take part in the meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. In addition to the KDA, the United States will be represented by the Distilled Spirits Council, the American Craft Spirits Association, and the President's Forum, the Scotch Whisky Association, Spirits Canada, Spirits Europe, the Irish Whisky and Spirits Associations, and Japan's Spirits and Liqueurs Producers Association are also taking part. There will be a news conference Thursday at the Fraser History Museum following the summit, and we'll have complete coverage of the summit from Louisville on our midweek episode of WhiskyCast this week. One other note on trade: Japan and the European Union signed a new free trade agreement this week that should gradually remove tariffs on whiskeys, other spirits, and wine. Japan is one of the leading export markets for Scotch whiskey, while Europe is the largest export market for Japanese whiskeys. The agreement still requires legislative approval on both sides before it takes effect. And given the fact that Europe's new import tariffs on American whiskey are raising prices and forcing some distillers to change their exporting plans, one might think that this would not be the best time to launch export sales in Europe. However, that's exactly what New York's Widow Jane Distillery is doing. It has signed a deal with Maverick Drinks to start distributing its whiskeys in Europe, and Widow Jane head distiller Vince Olison is excited.
It's been a long time coming. I can remember when we're working in Brooklyn, not sure if we were going to be able to pay our paychecks for the next week, and now we're shipping pallets to Europe. It's pretty incredible.
The timing is a bit off, though, since the tariffs just came in. Are you guys going to be hit by those?
So the way it's going to work is luckily we got our first order into the market before those tariffs hit. And so our first several hundred cases are going to be available at regular price. And that will allow people to get their hands on Widow Jane, taste it, and once that second round comes through, there will be a bit of a price increase, but unfortunately in this political landscape, there's nothing else we can do about it.
Unless the trade war gets solved before your second shipment goes through, right?
That would be ideal. I would like to see all that go away. It seems a little silly and meaningless.
Olison expects the impact from tariffs on future shipments to result in retail price hikes of somewhere between 15 and 20%. They'll also be taking part in several European whiskey festivals this autumn to promote the brand. Also on the business front, the French owners of Speyside Cooperage are expanding their operations in the U.S. They'll be investing around $26 million to build a new cooperage and a stave mill in southwest Virginia. Construction on both projects should begin in the next few weeks. The company already has cooperages in Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia, along with its flagship cooperage in Scotland. We do have some new whiskeys to talk about, and we'll start with the second edition of the Balvenie's 14-year-old Peat Week single malt. The first edition came out last year, but was somewhat hard to find because of its limited availability. But the Balvenie's David Laird says the 2018 edition should be much easier to find.
We were actually experimenting, obviously, back in the 2002, 2003 time, and once we knew it was actually working, the guys back at the Ian Miller and his team back in the day at the distillery started going, well, this is working, so we should actually expand a little bit and start making a little bit more. So luckily we've got a little bit more product for everybody this year. Essentially, we're making pretty much the same whiskey this year again. but we've kind of changed up the barrel ratio in there. For me, what I get on this one, it's a little bit more of the phenolic drying flavor coming through from the 2002, which is kind of unique because the PPMs and everything is the same. And it just shows you that different year of production, those kind of microclimates, whatever was going on that year, is physically created a different whiskey than what we had that year. And that's kind of the fun thing of the peak weeks that are going to keep coming out. Every year we did a little bit of experimentation. Having that floor malting on has allowed us to figure out where we could do that, and then we're able to bring all that malted barley in at the right specs. And you're going to get a nice little treat every time we do this, so it's something a little different.
The 2018 Peat Week has a recommended U.S. retail price of $99.99 a bottle. I had the chance to taste it here in New Orleans, and I'll have my tasting notes for it in a few minutes. By the way, there will be at least one more new release from the Balvenie in 2018. We're expecting the 25-year-old edition of Doublewood to come out in September as the Balvenie celebrates the 25th anniversary of that edition. Tomatin is releasing a new limited edition 15-year-old Highland single malt scotch that's finished in Portuguese Moscatel wine casks for 5 years. Only 6,000 bottles will be available worldwide, with a recommended retail price of £75, around $99 at current exchange rates. Diageo dropped a hint on social media this week about a new series of single malt whiskeys coming this fall as part of a tie-in with the final season of Game of Thrones. We don't have any details other than what Diageo disclosed on social media. The Game of Thrones single malt collection will have bottlings from Lagavulin, Oban, Talisker, Cardew, Royal Lochnagar, Dalwhinnie, Clynelish, and the Singleton, though we don't know which one of the 3 distilleries that make up the Singleton range will be included. We'll have more details as they're available, and we're also waiting for final details on the Johnny Walker White Walker Game of Thrones edition that is also set for this fall. Australia's Sullivan's Cove is releasing a new single-barrel expression. The American oak cask was bottled at 47.5% ABV with no filtration at all. Only 259 bottles are available through the distillery's website at a price of $330 Australian. That's around $245 US dollars. West Virginia's Smooth Ambler Distillery is making a change to its Contradiction bourbon, which blends the distillery's own bourbon with sourced bourbons. Ever since it was released in 2015, it's been bottled at 50% ABV. But starting next month, it'll be available at a lower strength of 46%. The recommended retail price is coming down too, from the original $49.99 a bottle to $39.99. Smooth Ambler founder John Little says the move should satisfy consumers who wanted both a lower proof version and a lower price. Jack Daniel's has a significant travel retail business and will be releasing a new bottled in bond version next month exclusively in travel retail. Most of the details won't be released until an August 1st event in New York City, but Jack Daniel's assistant head distiller Chris Fletcher gave us a brief preview.
It's the classic Old No. 7 recipe, 80% corn, 12% malted barley, 8 rye. Of course, only from one distillation season, and like all Jack Daniel's products, all made in Lynchburg, Tennessee.
Now, most of us really didn't realize that you make a bottled in bond product.
Well, it's new. Any of our whiskeys at 100 proof would qualify as bottled in bond. As long as we don't cross the distillation seasons, which typically we would not. So anything that we would offer at 100 proof would qualify as bottled in bond.
No details on pricing yet. We'll have those when they're available. Other news out of Brown-Forman, and appropriately this week, given the focus at Tales of the Cocktail on the hospitality industry, Woodford Reserve is partnering with the James Beard Foundation to create a scholarship program for culinary and spirits industry professionals to expand their spirits knowledge. Brett Jeffries of Woodford Reserve explains.
What we're looking to do is partner with an organization that really focuses on quality and flavor and has really a connection to the chefs around the country. And so we reached out to them and had a conversation about how can we help. And they talked about the idea of a scholarship, which is really core to their values. And we partnered together to come up with the scholarship to support bartenders and up and coming in the industry.
And it's sort of hard for people who are interested in the cooking world really to understand spirits and to sort of get that experience, because they spend all their time in cooking schools learning how to deal with cooking and not necessarily drinking.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're learning is that anyone that really has an appreciation for flavor, whether you're a chef or whether you're a bartender, really is looking for the best ingredients and looking for people to help them be the best at who they can be. And when we started talking to the James Beard Foundation, that's exactly their role and where we felt like we could be a support to that. So whether you're a chef or a bartender or working together with a chef and a bartender, you could be a restaurant or a bar. You're looking to give the best quality ingredients to the consumer, and if we can help them on that journey, then I think we've done some good.
Woodford Reserve and the James Beard Foundation also will team up for a series of 10 Taste America dinners around the country this fall. And finally, New Hampshire's State Liquor Commission has not been shy about encouraging cross-border business at its state-owned stores. And the commission is opening up its third annual Pappy Van Winkle charity raffle online. The commission is selling 1,000 tickets at $100 each for the raffle. First prize is a complete collection of Van Winkle bourbons, including the Pappy 25-year-old edition released last year. The prize package also includes a trip to New Hampshire at the end of October for the commission's annual Distillers Showcase Festival and a Pappy Van Winkle tasting dinner. The proceeds from the raffle benefit Best Buddies New Hampshire, a nonprofit group that works with people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. We've posted a link in our show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. That's also where you can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long. The news is brought to you by Highland Park, the Orkney's single malt with Viking soul. Look for the entire range of Highland Park whiskeys at your local whiskey shop or visit highlandparkwhiskey.com. Time now for the WhiskyCast calendar of events. The Macallan's Immersive Distillery Experience will be in Vanderbilt Hall at New York City's Grand Central Station this week from Wednesday through Friday. Whiskey Live Perth is this coming weekend in Perth, Australia, along with the Whiskey Brothers' The Only Whiskey Show in Johannesburg, South Africa. New Riff Distilling's attempt for the world's biggest bourbon toast is coming up on July 31st on the Newport Southgate Bridge in Newport, Kentucky. And the next bourbon salon at Louisville's Oxmoor Farm will feature women in distilling August 1st. The Whiskey Show Melbourne is in Australia August 10th and 11th, and Whiskey Fringe 2018 is the 10th through the 12th in Edinburgh, Scotland. Right now we have 190 different events on the searchable calendar at whiskycast.com. If you have a festival, a tasting, or other whiskey-related event coming up, just use the contact form at our website to let us know all about it.
This is whiskey. Johnny Walker's Scotch whiskey. From this place, and these places in that place. These are the people that make it. Aging in oak for 12 long years. See, the land that shapes these people and the people that shape this whiskey all shape how bloody good it tastes. Bold as it is complex. For every step you take, this is Johnny Walker Black Label, friends. Step right up. Can I drink this now?
Johnny Walker Black Label Blended Scotch Whiskey. 40% alcohol by volume. Imported by Diageo North America, Norwalk, Connecticut. Please drink responsibly.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Lagavulin. And once again, I've been in New Orleans for the last few days for Tales of the Cocktail. While it is open to the public, Tales is really geared toward bartenders and other hospitality industry professionals. It's become one of the industry's largest gatherings each year, but in the year since last year's Tales, the future of the festival was very much in doubt. The event's previous management was criticized widely for a number of missteps that led to questions about their commitment to diversity. And earlier this year, a new nonprofit foundation was formed to take over Tales of the Cocktail. The Solomon family of New Orleans and local industry veteran Neil Bodenheimer took over management of Tales and brought in Caroline Rosen to manage the foundation's day-to-day operations as executive director. We talked in the lobby of the Hotel Monteleone. the home of Tales. A lot of changes this year with Tales. It is, shall we say, not your father's Tales of the Cocktail as it was in the first 15 or so years, right?
Yes, definitely. We're excited. This year we're bringing a lot of new energy to a wonderful event. Excited to turn it into a foundation and excited to bring some new fun elements to it as well.
Let's go through the changes. There were a lot of issues with the previous management. New ownership. Explain what's happened since then.
Absolutely. So February 16th, the Solomon family, Neil Bodenheimer, took over as our board of directors. We are a full 501c3 foundation. Everything we do runs through our foundation and our nonprofit. And our goal is really to give back to the hospitality and spirits community. We're here to educate, support, and advance those. And we really kicked that off this year by committing to the industry of giving back $250,000. We kicked off Tales this week by announcing who is our first cohort of recipients for that $250,000. And I think it really set a nice tone to show that we're here to give back and support our community.
And while some people might think it a bit strange to have an opening party that at a cocktail conference that did not serve alcohol, that's exactly what you had at Wednesday night's opening party, right?
Absolutely. We are so honored to work with partners like William Grant & Sons. For them to see the need for this and for them to really want to make a statement like that was something that was really special, and we're super proud to partner with them. It was a really great event. I must say the William Grant & Sons team in Charlotte just killed it. So, you know, it's all about being a holistic and full bartender and part of the hospitality community.
Let's talk about what the bartenders that come to this get out of it. It's not just cocktail training, is it?
It's not. We obviously have cocktail training and we have wonderful tastings, but it's also how do we make sure that you're getting the best all-around education that you need, whether that's from diversity training to sexual harassment training to overdose. Like, how do you identify these things? We brought in a whole new group this year, or a whole new group of seminars called Beyond the Bar. It's free and open to the public. It's at the New Orleans Athletic Club, and we've just asked everyone to come in and see and do yoga and experience that.
And wellness is really sort of a key in this, as opposed to previous Tales where it basically was a massive cocktail party for 5 nights.
You know, cocktails are a huge part of what we do, but again, we want to make sure that we have a space for everyone that wants to be in this industry, whether they're drinking or not, to be successful. And so we need to talk about that. We hope that this is just the beginning. We hope that the bartenders, bar owners, businesses that are here will see that we're addressing and talking about these issues and take it home with them, and that this is a constant conversation and not one that we're just having once a year.
And a serious commitment to diversity this time, right?
Absolutely. When we kicked off, especially when giving back to our grants, we went to put together our grants committee, and they're diverse from where they live to their gender to everything else about them, and it's something that we're going to include in everything that we do.
How much more can Tales grow? You have 15,000 people apparently this week in just for Tales. How much bigger can this get?
You know, I have a really, really wonderful board, and there's some really fantastic minds helping think about the growth of this. I would love to see it grow because that means we give to get back more. You know, I want to be giving away millions of dollars in the next few years, and I want to do that in a really thoughtful way. So we'll just have to see what the growth looks like. I'm going to get through this weekend, and then I'll let you know.
There are a few brands that skipped this year because of the new ownership, and they wanted to see how things went. What can you do to convince those guys to come back?
You know, we are who we are. We're a foundation that's here to educate, support, and advance those in the hospitality and spirits community. I hope that they'll see our work and want to be involved, but that's not going to deter us from continuing to do what we're going to do. And I think that we've kicked off this week by showing that we're invested, we're in this for the long haul, and we want to be a partner with this community.
What's the biggest surprise you've had so far this week?
The biggest surprise so far I've had this week is and I'm going to jinx it now that I'm about to say this. You know that, right? So far, registration's been pretty smooth. That's what I've heard nightmarish stories. So we're very lucky that so far so good. I want everyone when they're coming in to have that first initial touch with Tales Foundation to be a smooth one, and I'm actually very excited that it has.
Have you actually had a chance to get a cocktail yet at this event?
I have gotten a cocktail. I actually have an Aperol Spritz with me, which is not whiskey, but someone gave it to me from the Carousel Bar this morning.
Saturday night, the foundation presented its annual Spirited Awards at the Orpheum Theatre. There were 2 big winners. The American Bar at London's Savoy Hotel was named the world's best bar, along with winning the award for the best international bar team. Sweet Liberty in Miami took the award for world's best spirits selection, along with best American bar team, and it was the evening's sentimental favorite. That's because Sweet Liberty founder and bartending legend John Lermayer died a couple of months ago. In addition to honoring him with the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation donated $10,000 to the fund set up to help John's teenage son. We also want to congratulate our colleagues Noah Rothbaum and David Wondrich of the Daily Beast's Life Without Bars podcast. They took home the Spirited Award for Best Podcast, Online Video Series, or Broadcast, and it was truly an honor for WhiskyCast to be one of the 4 finalists for the award. We'll post a link for the complete list of Spirited Awards winners in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. And congratulations to all of the winners and finalists. There are a bunch of great bars out there on that list that you really should check out. That's WhiskyCast In-Depth, brought to you by Lagavulin, the legendary Islay Single Malt. Look for the classic Lagavulin 16-year-old, the Distiller's Edition, and the throwback 8-year-old Lagavulin at a whiskey shop near you. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery. Before I left for New Orleans, I received a sample of the new Bladnock 10-year-old single malt we mentioned in the news a couple of weeks ago. It's matured in bourbon casks and bottled at 46.7% ABV. The nose has notes of butterscotch, dried flowers, and just a hint of citrus. The taste starts off thick and oily at first, followed by a touch of white pepper that fades slowly to reveal hints of honey, vanilla, and cocoa beans. The finish is long, but subtle and gentle. It's really good to see new whiskeys coming out of Bladnock, and I'm scoring their 10-year-old single malt a 93. Next up, we heard about the Balvenie 2018 Peat Week edition a few minutes ago. It's a 14-year-old single malt bottled at 48.3% ABV. The nose is smoky, but not medicinal, and is complemented nicely by vanilla, heather, honey, and a soft oakiness. The taste is smoky and oaky with campfire smoke and a good peatiness that lasts and lasts, along with hints of honey and vanilla. The finish is nice and long with a gentle smokiness, and I'm scoring the Balvenie's 2018 Peat Week edition a 93. I'll have more tasting notes in just a minute, but first, our tasting notes are brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery, proud to announce the 2018 edition of Parker's Heritage Collection. This year's edition carries on Parker Beam's legacy of excellence and innovation with a unique bourbon finished in orange Curacao barrels that accent the bourbon's own natural hints of citrus. Once again, sales of this year's edition of the Parker's Heritage Collection will benefit the ALS Association. Find out more at heavenhilldistillery.com. Think wisely, drink wisely. Now, Tales provides a chance for smaller boutique spirits brands to get their products in front of bar and restaurant managers, and I got to try the Navazos Palazzi Spanish single malt. This one was distilled at Spain's DYC distillery, but Navazos Palazzi put it into a Bota Punta Oloroso sherry cask. It's bottled at 57.5% ABV, and the nose has sweet notes of brandy and barley sugar, along with toffee, dates, and just a hint of marzipan. The taste is spicy and fruity with dark fruits complemented by cardamom and just a hint of clove. Touches of barley sugar and Manuka honey are in the background. The finish is long and subtle with touches of tree fruits, Manuka honey, and just a hint of spice. I'm scoring the Navassos Palazzi Bota Punta Single Oloroso cask a 92. Now, please don't kill me for this one. Wild Turkey had a party Friday here at Tales. Eddie and Bruce Russell pulled some dusty bottles out of their secret storage place to bring to New Orleans, including a 17-year-old Wild Turkey 101 export bottling that was produced back in 2001 just for the Japanese market. Of course, it's bottled at the standard 50.5% ABV that Jimmy Russell loves, and there's absolutely no old bottle effect here. The nose has a good oakiness along with honey, vanilla, muted spices, and just a hint of brown sugar. The taste has a great balance that comes alive with pepper and a hint of cinnamon, along with charred oak, honey, vanilla, and brown sugar sweetness. The finish, it's long, with touches of spices, oak, and caramel candy. I'm scoring the Wild Turkey 101 17-year-old export edition a 94. The What I'm Tasting This Week department is brought to you by Heaven Hill Distillery. I'll be adding these tasting notes to our searchable list of more than 2,200 different whiskeys from around the world at whiskycast.com.
Redbreast fans have always cherished our whiskey's sherry notes, so we set out to embellish that character. Introducing the Redbreast Listowel edition, a quintessential single pot still Irish whiskey finished in first fill Oloroso sherry casks from Spain's prestigious Bodegas Listowel. Carrying Redbreast's trademark pot still spices and dark dried fruit notes, the Listowel edition is graced with an enduring sherry finish that would be better described as a final act. Discover the newest branch on the Redbreast family tree.
Let's open up the inbox now for Your Voice, brought to you by Lot 40. I posted a photo the other night from Barrel Proof, one of New Orleans' legendary dive bars that just happens to have a world-class whiskey selection. Matt Baglowell at Dr. Matt Dreamboat on Twitter saw the photo and tweeted this response. "Looks like I'm moving to New Orleans. I'm sure wifey and the children will understand. Matt, I hope they like the humidity." And Brett Nolinsky, who lives just up the road in Prairieville, Louisiana, posted this on our Facebook page. "Barrel Proof? If it is, you broke the first rule of Barrel Proof. No talking about it." Too late, Brett. No one told me about that rule. And after we posted a story on the website about the Whiskey Summit in Louisville this coming week, our pal Davin DeCurgamo tweeted this. "Mark, did you see the line, 'We are one whiskey family'? It genuinely warms my heart. Hashtag one whiskey family." Well, Eric Gregory repeated that same line during our interview a few minutes ago, and yes, it may be occasionally dysfunctional, but we are one whiskey family. If you have something you'd like to share with the family around the world, you can always post it on the Your Voice page at whiskycast.com or look for us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr at WhiskyCast, and the email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Your Voice is presented by Lot 40, Canada's award-winning 100% pot still rye whiskey. Lot 40, unapologetically Canadian. Please drink responsibly. Now, it wouldn't be Tales without having at least one cocktail, and since I am here in the Hendrick's Gin Ministry of Relaxation, and since it is hotter than you-know-what in New Orleans right now, put it this way, when the front page of one of the New Orleans papers has a story about excessive heat and humidity, if they put it on the front page, that means it's really hotter than hell. So whiskey's probably not what you might want to drink in this weather. Joseph Martella is here with Hendrick's Gin, and he just made me this great cocktail. And tell me what you put into it and how people can make this at home with Hendrick's Gin.
Sure, of course, Mark. Well, it's basically pretty much like lemonade, one-on-one, one radio of lemon juice, one radio of sugar. Hendrick's Gin is going to make you like a very fresh lemonade with a hint of cucumber. and then I top it with a bit of tonic water instead of soda. This is gonna make the lemonade a bit bitter, and the flavors and freshness of the cucumber are gonna come up. It's very refreshing for this heat, and it's very easy to do it in home as well.
And it's a perfect choice on a very hot day, isn't it?
I agree on that, Mark, yeah.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I appreciate it. Now I'm going to go finish that cocktail. But before that, we have to finish the rest of the show. Let's close the show out now with Behind the Label, our look at the science, history, and other things that make whiskey unique. But in this case, I thought it might be interesting to see how whiskey can make other spirits unique. I came across the folks from Captive Spirits Distilling in Seattle here at Tales. They also specialize in gin, specifically their Big Gin brand. And while their standard Big Gin is pretty good, they use whiskey barrels for two different variations. A bourbon barrel finished gin, and of all things, a peated gin. Ben Capdeville founded Captive Spirits with his wife, Holly Robinson.
Well, the bourbon barreled Big Gin is it's our flagship barreled product. We've been making it for about 7 years now. Top honors winner at the International Wine and Spirits Competition in London in 2014, which no American gin has ever done before. And I like to call it the most American of gins for a few reasons. Number one, it's distilled from corn. Number two, it's distilled in Vendome pot stills that are built in Louisville, Kentucky. And then we age it in the most American spirit of bourbon barrels that we get from Heaven Hill Distillery. It's a 6-month finish for the bourbon barreled Big Gin. We do 3 years, 3 months for the barrel reserve Big Gin. And the peat barreled Big Gin is finished in peated single malt whiskey barrels for 4 months.
And where do you get those barrels from?
We get those from a beautiful distillery in Seattle called Westland. They make a American peated single malt, and we've also added some Ardbeg barrels to the mix as well.
Did you have any trouble convincing people to try peated gin?
Yes and no. I think that the people that like Scotch tend to be people that like robust flavors. Gin is, I think, a robust tasting spirit oftentimes. So it's not too. It's very intriguing. People that like gin are into it. People that like peat are definitely impressed by it because it's the peat note is considerably higher now that we've added the Ardbeg barrels into the mix. So we blend some Ardbeg with Westland, and it's been it's challenging. But once we get the liquid to lips, that's when it starts to make sense for people.
You ever think about making whiskey?
I've moonshined quite a bit, and I love making it and drinking it, but we're just going to stick to the gin category for now. But we like using the whiskey barrels from our friends and partners in the industry.
The bourbon barrel and peated versions of Big Gin are available in 30 U.S. states, while their barrel reserve edition is only sold at the distillery in Seattle. It's just another way whiskey makes our lives better. If you have something you'd like us to look at on Behind the Label, just use the contact form at whiskycast.com to get in touch with us. That's also where you'll find links for WhiskyCast HD videos and the WhiskyCast Tasting Panel podcast. It's brought to you by the Whiskey Exchange. You'll also find the latest whiskey news, events, cocktail recipes, and much more, including a complete archive of past episodes. Our cask strength conversation continues online all week long. You'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr at WhiskyCast. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
This is whiskey, Johnny Walker's Scotch whiskey, from this place and these people, Scotch makers, creating the bold and complex flavour of Johnny Walker Black Label. Step right up.
WhiskyCast, brought to you by Redbreast, the definitive single pot still Irish whiskey. Those in the know Redbreast.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2018, and comes to you twice a week, usually from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. But this time around, we're at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.